So I want to say welcome to the Oakland Center for Spiritual Living. My name is Reverend Sally Bartholomew, and I'm your host this evening. I'm a licensed minister with the Centers for Spiritual Living. Welcome to our midweek Oasis Wednesday night service. What is Wednesday night service and what is Oasis? Well, it's a place where we can come together as a community to be spiritually refreshed between Sundays. Most Wednesday night services build upon the theme of the previous Sunday. Last Sunday, we had a guest speaker, Reverend Lisa Hamilton, and she introduced ideas inspired by this week's talk title of the Universal Voice. And this evening, practitioner Alena Hutchinson will add her ideas to this weekly theme. We present our Wednesday night services in a satsang style, building off the principles and practices shared during the previous Sunday, with the intention that tonight, these evening gatherings be informal, intimate, and interactive, very rich. The annual theme for Centers for Spiritual Living for 2023 is Living Out Loud. And our monthly theme for January is Root and Reboot, honoring our tradition of going back to basics in January. So I'd like to take a few moments to welcome any new people. If you are new to our community, I invite you to please visit our homepage at www.oaklandcsl.org. And once you're there, I invite you to click on the I'm New icon, look at the lower left-hand corner of that page, and submit your email address. Once you do, you'll begin receiving the Village newsletter once a week in your email, and it has all the information on what is happening at the center and in the coming weeks. So before we get started this evening, there's a couple of housekeeping notes to go over. I invite you to make sure that your audio is muted and your video cameras are turned off. Our Zoom team in the background will help you with that as well, but better if you do it for yourself. We do this so that our recording and our transmission is at the highest quality it can be. So I also invite you to stay tuned all the way to the end of service, where we have special and important announcements to share with you. I think that's it for now. And so now I'd like to introduce our speaker this evening, practitioner and ministerial student Alena Hutchinson has been serving as a licensed practitioner since 2020, I believe. And if I got the date wrong, please correct me. So I'd like to introduce her and have her come and speak on the topic of the universal voice. But before we go too far, Alena, will you pray us in this evening?
I will do that. Let's just take a breath and be present for this. There's only one presence. There's only one power. There's only one mind that has created everything. That is the wellspring from which everything springs forth. All goodness, all love, all light. It's that divine order that holds everything in the earth, in all of creation, in perfect order and balance and harmony. And even where circumstances or conditions look like that's not true, that order is there, underneath, within, around. It's that one heart, that source of love that has created all of us, created each one of us as a unique manifestation of itself, just to have the experience it could have as us. And as all these unique manifestations of spirit gather here tonight, we are so grateful. We know we are blessed. We are blessed to have this gathering. We are blessed by what each person brings to this gathering. And we are blessed by what each one of us will take away from it. That deeper connection to spirit that will radiate out into our lives as we move out into the world once this evening is over. So in this place of gratitude, I speak my word. I know that every word is blessed. And I say, and so it is. And I will try to not interrupt too much this evening with having to take a drink of water. As Reverend Sally said, thank you, Reverend Sally, our CSL theme for 2020 is Living Out Loud. The theme for January is Root and Reboot. I want to say a few words first about that January theme of Root and Reboot. It's a CSL tradition to begin the year by going back to our roots, as Reverend Sally said, by grounding ourselves in our basic principles. So often the first 4 weeks of the year are dedicated to reviewing the first 4 chapters of the Science of Mind textbook. Last week, practitioner Doug Myers introduced us to that basic teaching of chapter 1, that God is not an old man in the sky, but a concept, a dynamic creative force that's the source and substance of all of creation. In chapter 2 of the textbook, the one we sometimes review in this week, we're reminded we are simply unique manifestations of that spirit. And this month, we're invited to reboot, to find within ourselves a deeper, more expansive awareness of that truth, to more fully embody those principles, to express them more completely in our daily lives, so that we are, in fact, as our theme says for the year, living them out loud. The theme for this week is the universal voice, and in a moment we'll look at one way that spirit, the universal voice, calls to us to find our truth and live it out loud. When I heard that the theme for the year was living out loud, I first went to that great spiritual resource, the Urban Dictionary. The Urban Dictionary says that living out loud means being yourself, genuine, open, trustworthy, with sass, spice, and flair. Sounds like a definition that our Reverend Sunshine Michelle would love. Not quite BAM, but close. The Urban Dictionary went on. It's living on purpose, loving others and yourself, living passionately for your values, no matter what. Letting others see your light shine, not being scared to be different or worrying about others' opinions of you, living a life you're excited about with purpose on your terms, inspiring others to do the same. And I thought, dang, the Urban Dictionary did good. Several writers have weighed in on what it means to live out loud. The transcendentalist Henry David Thoreau declared in his somewhat serious way, I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and to see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not when it came to die, discover that I had not lived. To learn to live out loud, he withdrew into the emptiness of a cabin in the woods for a year. Counterculture author and gonzo journalist Hunter S. Thompson had a different take. Life, he said, should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, wow, what a ride. Ayana Van Zant simply said, to live out loud means showing up as your authentic self. One could argue that the two quotes from Thoreau and Thompson are a perfect reflection of each of them showing up as their authentic self. So what does it mean for us, followers of Science of Mind, to show up as our authentic selves? While most of us are aware that Ernest Holmes was a student of all the world's great religions, a reading of his work also reveals the extent to which he was fascinated by what was then the emerging field of psychology. For one of his contemporaries, Carl Jung, The primary goal of life was becoming a maximized, authentic individual. For him, that meant bringing the parts of ourselves that were relegated to the unconscious, all the parts that we've pushed away and repressed because we don't want to be that, bringing those shadow elements of ourselves into awareness and meeting them with radical acceptance. When we think of embracing our shadow, often we think of those negative qualities, needing to admit that sometimes we aren't as together or successful as we would like to be, that we can sometimes be selfish or feel jealousy, that we actually would like very much to take that last shrimp on the platter. We forget sometimes that some of our best qualities can also be hidden in our shadow self. If our parents were depressed or introverted or low energy, our bright, exuberant, joyful self might not have been welcomed. If our older brother was not a good student or not a good athlete, our own capabilities might have gotten muted to protect his feelings. Our natural sense of self-confidence or self-acceptance may have gotten labeled as us being too full of ourselves. Those wonderful qualities may have gotten repressed. They feel like they're not part of us. And if those things are hard for our human selves to accept sometimes, then what to make of this idea that we are actually unique manifestations of spirit itself? Yeah, it's a nice idea. We hear it a lot. We nod. We go, uh-huh. We say we believe it, and we may want to believe it, but do we really believe it? How can we possibly embrace something so big? One thing that helps us is realizing that we're unique manifestations of spirit, but so is everybody else. Nevertheless, that phenomenon in which our human selves have trouble really embracing and making room for the truth of who and whose we are probably explains the enormous popularity of that quote from Marianne Williamson, the well-known Course in Miracles teacher, the quote that Nelson Mandela made even more famous. Our deepest fear, she said, is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that frightens us most. Ernest Holmes was aware of this phenomenon. In his famous Sermon by the Sea, he said, "Find me one person who can get their own littleness out of the way, and they shall reveal to me the immeasurable magnitude of the universe in which I live." While he talked about a power for good that we can use, he stressed that we can only use it to the extent that we can embody it. That, it seems, is our life's work. For those of us who are committed to science of mind, our true authenticity lies in our embodiment of that truth, in the marriage of our spiritual beingness with our unique human expression. So, on a conscious level, our human brains are likely to react to such an idea with a kind of, aw, shucks, who me kind of attitude. But deep down, we know the truth that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. On a deeper level, even if we have never heard of science of mind, we humans are drawn over and over again to the truth that we are more than what we seem to be. In the United States alone, we spend hundreds of billions of dollars each year to have people affirm to us what we already know. Let me explain. When I first saw the theme for this week was the universal voice, I didn't initially think of a voice lifted in song or even that still small voice within. I thought of the way that spirit often shows up in the human realm in the voices of storytellers. Throughout human history, storytelling has been one of the primary ways that people connect to spirit, through parables, the story of the prodigal son, or through creation stories, like the Hopi story of Spider grandmother singing life into her creations. And mostly through what author Joseph Campbell called the hero's journey, which is actually the process of individuation, of discovering one's authentic self expressed in symbolic form in a story. Most of you are familiar with maybe the concept of the hero's journey. And when I say hero, please feel free to use heroine to hear that heroine word, if that speaks to you. Campbell says that every good story, every story that we really resonate with, whether it's in books or films or around a campfire, it follows the structure of the hero's journey. He describes it this way: a hero ventures forth from the world of common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are there encountered, and a decisive victory is won. The hero comes back from this mysterious adventure transformed with a boon, a hard-won gift, and the power to bestow that gift on his fellow man. If you've been in OCSL for a while, you may remember a great talk given by practitioner Robin Rice Olmsted about the hero or heroine's journey portrayed in The Wizard of Oz. Since that story is very familiar to folks, I'm going to use it to elaborate just a little bit on the idea of the hero's journey. You may remember that there are stages, a lot of them. We'll cover the highlights. The first stage is a call to adventure. Through inner stirrings or an intervention or some catastrophic event, the hero is called to leave old ways and old ideas behind and journey forth into a new way of being. From the drabness of her Kansas farm, Dorothy begins to long for a different kind of life, imagining a life somewhere over the rainbow. The second stage is the refusal of the call. The prospect of leaving on an adventure seems inconvenient or even frightening, but something keeps nudging the hero until they finally are forced to answer the call. In The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy's longing for a new life and even a threat to the life of her beloved dog Toto aren't enough to make her leave home until a tornado suddenly deposits her in Oz. Next, there's help in the form of allies offering gifts. Glinda, the Good Witch, offers her the ruby slippers and guides her to the yellow brick road, leading her to Oz and maybe a way home. Inevitably, there's a stage where the hero is swallowed by the unknown, often in a dark place, maybe a cave, which represents the unconscious, where old conditioning and old fears are released. The hero's poised on that transition point between their old existence and a new way of being. In our story, Dorothy is literally swallowed up in a poppy field, nearly lapses into unconsciousness, and barely makes it to Oz, even though it's shining brightly in the distance. A series of trials follows. The heroes hurled into various adventures and challenges. For Dorothy, monsters appear in the form of bad witches and flying monkeys and fake wizards, but she's able to survive with the help of her allies. All this culminates in what Jean Houston has called the meeting with the beloved, an expansion of consciousness, where the hero receives that item that symbolizes their expanded awareness, the boon, the holy grail, the ring of power. In The Wizard of Oz, Glinda reappears and tells Dorothy that the ruby slippers that she had all along were the key. Her boon is that she's reminded of who she is, a powerful being who all along had the power within her to return home. The final stage of the hero's journey is the flight back across the threshold between worlds. The hero returns to their everyday life, but changed and able to bring the gift they received back to others. In her book, The Wizard of Us, Jean Houston talks about Dorothy's transformation and return. She says, Dorothy goes home to Kansas, but not before she grows up in Oz, not before she discovers her own world of sufficiency and abundance. It's in Oz that she undergoes the trials that teach her the magic, the wizardry, the sacred potency that lies within each of us. The movie ends where it begins, in Kansas. Dorothy has gone home but is changed. She returns mythic. And we know that she will green the wasteland of Kansas with her newfound knowings. That is the power of myth. It's deep and it allows us to be more. So the stories that we resonate with are the ones that are clothed in the details of everyday life, but are actually journeys about our story, or stories about our journey as spiritual beings having a human experience. We resonate with those stories because they have the power to transform us simply by making us more aware of what we already know on some level, that we live in a spiritual universe, that universal voice is always calling us to open to our full expression of our true essence, to our authentic selves. With Dorothy, we're reminded that everything we seek is already within us. In the words of Ernest Holmes, we arrive at a consciousness of unity only in such degree as we see that what we're looking for, we're looking with, and we're looking at. With Frodo Baggins, we find that even a mere hobbit is worthy of being entrusted with the ring of power. Or as Ernest might express it, the future beckons me forward into a more complete realization of my own worth and rightful place in the universe. With Luke Skywalker, we realize that we actually can use the Force. We are reminded of Ernest's famous declaration that there is a power for good greater than you are, and you can use it. Often when I prepare these talks, there's a moment, usually a few weeks before the talk, where I get a little download from Spirit, and the talk forms around it. An image, a story, a metaphor. This time it came in the form of a question. It said, in the new year, what's the story you want to tell about yourself? How often in the stories we tell about ourselves do we end up as victims, powerless, swept around by hostile forces, tornadoes, instead of being the heroes of our own stories, accepting the call to let go of the old and embrace new possibilities, facing down monsters, coming away transformed, and able through our own example to transform the lives of others? Do the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves function like the hero's journey? Do they connect us to spirit and to spiritual truths? Or do they reinforce the illusion of separation? For a few minutes, let's do a little mini visualization. For a few minutes, let's settle into our chairs, take a couple of deep breaths, and let's just pick an event in your life that involved a difficult struggle of some kind. Let the right one for tonight bubble up. And I'm going to pause and kind of let you think about this as we go along. Let's think about these questions. What was it that happened to you? How do you tell this story? What were the forces that you had to struggle with that may have seemed beyond your control? Can you tell that story as a hero's journey? Was there a point in time where the universe either called you to something bigger or so disrupted your life that you had to take on a new way of being? What monsters and adversaries did you have to face along the way? Who were the allies that showed up to help? What trials and challenges did you manage to survive? And how were you transformed? What was the boon? What was the gift that you were given as a result of that experience that you can now share with others or have been sharing with others? How does it feel to tell yourself that story from a place of being buffeted around by cruel fate? And how does it feel to tell yourself that story from a place of being the hero in your own hero's journey? As you go through this week, I invite you to think about where in your life has that universal voice called you to an adventure? And how can you tell those stories in this way as part of a hero's journey in your own life? Ernest Holmes talked about how our beliefs create our reality, but often reality is more complex than that. Often our stories create our reality. How would we feel about ourselves if we took the time to turn our best victim stories into stories of a hero's journey? As I wrote this talk, a certain type of story kept coming to mind, creation stories that speak to us of who we really are and what our role here as spiritual beings having a human experience. One of those stories simply holds that God saw a need in the world and filled it with you. In science of mind language, you would say that spirit created a unique manifestation of itself with particular qualities and attributes uniquely suited to fill that need, to do what only you could do here. Another story says that something happened to the earth. It's broken. There's a tear in the fabric of the world, and it's our job to repair it, one thread at a time. We never know how close it is to being fully repaired. The next good deed or small act of kindness that you do might be the thing that finally repairs the world. Ernest Holmes tells this tale in just a few words. When we hear the call of the universal voice within, the boon, the gift we get to use in our daily life is this truth, that which thou art, I am. One Christian writer spoke of living out loud and asked, what does it mean for Christians to live their life out loud? What if you were to become mute today and couldn't speak another word for the rest of your life? Would your life speak loudly enough that others could still see Jesus in you without words? In science of mind, we might say, in 2023, will your life speak loudly enough of the truth of your being that others can see the Christ consciousness in you, even without words? If that question is your call to adventure in 2023, the next stage of your hero's journey might be a temptation to resist the call. to feel like it's too much. You're already doing a lot, and things are actually pretty comfortable the way they are. And someone else can be the person who repairs that last thread and fixes the world. And who am I anyway to be the embodiment of Christ consciousness and the light of the world? I hear my own whiny inner teenager going, wait, what do I have to do? Why? My son must have gotten that one from me. As I think about it. To inspire you, I leave you with one final story. It's a story of a Buddhist monk, because no one gets living ordinary, everyday life from a spiritual perspective quite like the Buddhists. A writer told this story recently on Twitter. In one of his college classes, the guest lecturer for the day was a Buddhist monk who arrived at the classroom door and, without saying a word, simply walked to the board and wrote, "Everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to help mom with the dishes." Maybe the kind of spiritual magnificence that could save the world by rocking the world is a vibration that we can't hold all the time, but maybe we don't need to. Maybe what it looks like is being a little bit closer to our authentic selves. Maybe it means helping someone with the dishes, trying to see something from someone else's perspective, giving someone else the benefit of the doubt. Maybe each of us, the unique manifestations of spirit that we are, will have a different path, because God created each with our own particular qualities and abilities and quirks to fit a particular need that only we can fill. For some of us, living out loud could look like Hunter Thompson's version, skidding up broadside in a cloud of smoke, proclaiming, "Wow, what a ride." And for others, it could be the thoughtful introspection of Henry David Thoreau in the quiet, snowy woods of Massachusetts, learning to live deliberately. The truth for all of us may be that, like Dorothy, we have to be willing to embrace the idea that our power and magnificence, however loudly or quietly it's authentically expressed, our ability to live as authentic spiritual beings is not something we need to figure out. It's something that's in us all along. And maybe the first step is to notice all the times we have heard the universal voice. We have answered that call to adventure. We have been willing to embrace a new way of being, and we have gained something precious in the process that we can share with others, all because we heard a call and we said yes. So before we move into our discussion period, I would like to have just 1 minute or so of silence to allow you to check in with yourselves, to see what in the last 20 minutes is the thing that spoke to you, the thing that you needed to hear, the thought that you were reminded of, the question you need answered. What thoughts and comments might be coming up? So let's just take 1 minute of silence. Okay. So we invite everyone to turn your cameras if you'd like to, or say something, or wave, or raise your hand, whichever you prefer. Get a gallery view so I can see y'all.
Well, I see Robert's got his video on, but I don't see anyone else. Ready to speak.
on,
I can
people.
put you on the spot there.
I may be calling somebody.
Show your true face.
Alena, while everybody's coming to their thoughts, could you paste your questions in the chat? I tried to capture some of them, but I know I didn't get all of them, and I think they would be worthy of journaling later. Looks like Reverend Sunshine's got her video on too. I think maybe you stumped us.
I put maybe everybody's in the poppy field unconscious.
Well, I'll just kick us off and say, Alena, Allie, I always love the way you put your talks together, and you're very thoughtful, and I love the metaphors and the way you pulled in Robin's previous talk about the Wizard of Oz, which I wasn't there, but I was able to follow you with what you were saying, and the universal voice, and how there's a lot of different ways that we could approach such a topic. And so I just want to compliment you. I don't have anything else to say other than it's very, thought provoking. I agree with you, Reverend Sally. This is journal worthy of later. So thank you for that.
Robert, go ahead.
So the all of your quotes made me think of a couple of quotes I like. I'm a big Joseph Campbell fan, and there's a few quotes that I actually carry in my wallet, and one of the quotes is from Joseph Campbell, and it's, "The big question is whether you are going to be able to say a hearty yes to your adventure." And the other part that that really struck me as you were talking was the second stage, that whole refusing the adventure. That's very interesting to me. And it reminded me of another quote who I don't know who said this originally, but the quote is, we often meet our fate on the road we take to avoid it.
Yes.
And just that whole, what really struck me was that whole idea of resistance to life. You know, that we so often, if something doesn't happen exactly the way we think we want it to happen, then we push back against that. When what I think of is, and I can't do this all the time myself, of course, but what I think of is like how it would transform one's life to greet every obstacle as part of that adventure, you know, and every adversity as like, you know, part of that adventure, and seeing that the hero's journey in that way. I mean, it would totally transform your life into, you know, one, rather than an annoyance, it would be exciting. It would be a challenge. It would be a puzzle. So that's my thoughts.
I often sit with clients as they go through transitions at their work, in their career. They lose a job, they wanted a job they didn't get. And I can't usually say it, but I'm always thinking is every job I didn't get, every job I lost, I was so thrilled at some point not long after that, because it worked out so much better.
Sabrina, go ahead.
Am I unmuted? Yeah. Alena, you are a gift.
Oh, thank you.
You are just such a gift. Thank you so much. I too love Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. I want to talk about Marianne Williamson's quote. because that goes to like fear of success, right? And, afraid of being the light and all that other kind of stuff. And, I know that everyone here might be tired of hearing Dr. Dan, but in Dr. Dan today, we were talking about the kingdom of God and how long from me hearing that phrase as a child forever to fully understanding or feeling and embodying what that meant. And so I'm at that same place with the fear of success, and the light. And I was wondering, it was a journey to get to understanding the kingdom is now. And I'm wondering, how do I fully understand that fear of success, the fear of shining the light?
Yeah. I always go back to the theme that keeps coming up for me over and over again. I said it tonight, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and we have to like kind of really be with both of those. Often I talked about the shadow, and often it is our light. It is our great qualities that people around us can't tolerate when we're kids, or even now as adults. Sometimes we have a boss who's not crazy about us outshining them, or something. I've seen that in the corporate world some, right? So we have to like manage both of those. We have to look at our human self and allow for it, not going to spiritual bypass, not wish it away, work with it. I do have this kind of fear. Where does it come from? And then the other thing I talked about tonight was that the idea that we are spirit is so big. Ernest, talks about how you have to embody that, but he also talks about how it's a process. We gradually, bring realization in. We gradually are able to embody it more and more. And maybe it's just taking it in small bites. Like, can we be willing to entertain that idea as being real? Can we be willing to be willing? I think I've said this before. One of the first things I realized I needed to do when I got into prac class was, these are great ideas. I say I believe them. And do I really believe them? Just asking myself that over and over and over again. Do I really, what would it look like if I really believed this? And I think that, we just, with that, we take it in with baby steps. Yeah. So, yeah. Freya.
Go.
My camera's fuzzy, but that's okay. What's coming to me right now is the hero's journey is going from head to heart, and then embodiment from there to the belly, and to being rooted for embodiment. Just keeping it simple. Journey from head to heart.
Yeah, getting away from those. I mean, our brains are very powerful, and they like to go back to the same old habitual ways of thinking over and over and over again. And can we get out of that and open to something new? Yeah. And get it on a body level, like you said. Yeah. Who else? Anything else? Reverend Jerry.
Hi, Alena. I just wanted to appreciate you for this evening. It was really lovely. And I think that The hero's journey is a big journey, and just as we embark upon it, knowing and trusting and surrendering to that divine power that we know always moves us into the right and perfect choice or decision for ourselves. So I really appreciated your whole evening this evening, and I thank you for putting so much into the chat, the questions, because I think they're very thought-provoking, and my intention is to be with them and just see what surfaces. And for me, it's all about being surrendering to spirit. You know, I've had lots of experiences and opportunities to just surrender to the power and presence and know that I'm always divinely guided. And I really love living in the mystery of how things will unfold. And so it's a baby step process for all of us. We all always reach the port safely. I know that. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I was inspired, to kind of spend some time looking at different stories in this way, because I was thinking about what Robert said about the part where you resist it, where you don't want to answer the call. And I thought my first opportunity, I had said for years I wanted to move to California, and I had a friend who called me and said, I know you said you wanted to move sometime. I'm moving. I'm taking the bar exam. Do you want to like split the cost of the bar exam things? And I went, that would be crazy. No. A week later, I called her and went, yes.
I know, I think always being divinely guided, and just saying yes to ministry, to going through the process of ministry was a biggie. It's just like this
Yeah.
unknown. And all of a sudden you're pulled toward it. And then you know that you really know at the gut level. And so I think following our intuition and just, being true to ourselves and all
Well,
that you spoke.
and the important thing about that is like if you thought through it all intellectually, you'd never do it. It's just,
Exactly.
it's too much, it's too big, there are too many obstacles. You've got to go with that heart place, like Freya said, and your intuition, and just what's the next step. And the thing that really got to me when I was doing it was there was a period after I moved to California that was really difficult, a lot of transitions, a lot of chaos, and the thing that I thought going through these questions, there is a way that your brain wants to focus on those. That's the way our brains are constructed. We focus on the negative to protect ourselves, right? That's how we evolved. And yet the question that got me were, who were the allies that showed up to help? And they were, bosses, they were friends, they were practically strangers who did one little thing. It was really fascinating spending some time putting a focus on that. Who were the allies that showed up to help through that process? So, and I think unless anyone else has a burning question or comment.
I do.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Can
who
you
was
hear me?
Yes,
Oh.
It's Grady. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Grady.
It is.
Mr. Boyce.
It would take me too long to explain the whole thing. Well, just thank you, because I was able to experience what I'm realizing is a shake me, wake me experience for my good. But if I hadn't been here to hear and to, go through this, I just wouldn't have even have looked in that direction. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you were here.
Me too.
Okay.
And unless we have, again, another burning comment, we are just about at the time where we go to the announcements, if y'all are ready for that. All right, Reverend Sally.
All right. Alena, thank you so much for your talk this evening. Thank you for those questions. They are in the chat. If you want to save those questions for yourselves, take the moment now to go ahead and save the chat for yourself. I think it would be well worth doing some journaling on those questions. We love it. All right, Peter, I think we can go into the announcements. So let's give him a minute to get the slides up there. We love technology. All right. So here's the announcements. This coming Sunday, January 15th, our Reverend Sunshine will be talking about the topic of the internal song. Meditation starts at 10 a.m. and the service is at 10:30 a.m. Now, next Wednesday, I'll be doing a little different role as I'll be speaking on the topic of the internal song, continuing that theme from Sunday, and Reverend Sunshine will be hosting for that evening. Our meditation starts at 6:30 and the service is at 7 p.m. on Zoom. You may have noticed if you've been back to the center, the barrel is back. Several of our nonprofit partners are requesting items to use in their work. For January, we are collecting for the Jewish Family and Community Services, which provides support services to diverse communities. And they're assisting recent refugees from Ukraine and Afghanistan with settling into the East Bay area. And if you were here last Sunday, we had an individual speaking on that topic. So for a complete list of items, please visit our website, go to the nonprofit page under the About Us tab, or you can look in the Village News or jot down some notes from tonight's slide. Next, we have the Vision Board Party. It's back and in person, January 28th. It'll go from 11:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. The cost is a love donation of $50, and that includes all supplies and food, and all proceeds go to the center. Because seating is limited, you'll need to sign up on the events page ahead of time. Please do, and do so early. All right, drum roll for this one. It is time to sign up for your winter infusion of spiritual truth. Reverend Sunshine is offering 2 classes that she has created herself. The first in the series is Living What We Believe Through a Declaration of Principles. That's the What We Believe. This starts on Thursday, February 2nd for 4 weeks. And the second class is the Art of Active Listening and runs on Thursday evenings for 4 weeks, starting on March 9th. Each class runs from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And each class, if they were purchased separately, are $120. But if you sign up for both classes at the same time, you'll receive a 20% discount. Know that the links for this registration will go live on the website and on the Thursday Village News tomorrow. So be looking for those links. Next, we have the Women's Spiritual Empowerment Group is starting a 6-session meeting beginning on February 5th. It goes from 12:30 to 2 p.m. right after service on Sundays. Reverend Jerry is facilitating this group along with Reverend Catherine Socks. So please check the events page for the list of dates, and you can find that information on the website. And next, we started this last week, you can take Ernie home with you. The bookstore is having a 30% off sale all January on Ernest Holmes books, including the 365 Science of Mind book and other daily readers. Go to the bookstore and check it out. And always, for information on all that's going on at our Oakland Center, visit the website, read our weekly newsletter, the Thursday Village News, and remember, you can follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook for special updates and content that you'll only find by liking and subscribing to OCSL. Like and subscribe us today. So that's it for the announcements. And if you want to stick around afterwards, I'm sure that Reverend Sunshine and Reverend Jerry will be available to answer any questions about their classes and their group meetings. So let's move on to our giving time. And I don't know if you heard, I I caught a little bit of information about our pledge drive, which is continuing all year long. And I thought I heard the really great announcement that we were up to $195,000 in pledges. Fabulous. So let's continue that with our pledge and our giving this evening. As we say our giving affirmation together, joyously I give with an attitude of abundance, knowing that as I give, I do receive. So there are 5 ways that you can give via the donate icon that's on the website. You can give by credit card, by mail, by Zelle, by text, or the offering basket at Sunday service. Many ways to give to the center, and we encourage them all. So what a fabulous evening we have had this evening. I want to thank those who have helped to make this whole evening possible. And I'm going to start this evening with Constance and Reverend Sunshine, because they are the ones who bring forward the speakers. They're the ones who give us the information to share, and we are grateful for that. And this evening's speaker, Alena Hutchinson, has certainly given us a lot to think about, and we give her thanks. I give thanks to the Zoom team. This evening, it's Peter and Alice and Sabrina. And I give thanks to you, everyone that's here this evening, everyone that sees the video on YouTube. It truly takes a village, and we are grateful for this village. So Alena, I will pass it over to you for our closing prayer and invite everyone to stick around afterwards to check in.
So staying in that place of gratitude for being here, for having these spiritual beings coming together in this place, in this time, in exactly the right way. Knowing that we have co-created exactly what needed to be co-created tonight, that the work we do, the gathering, the coming together, the connection, the feeling of oneness is something that we create not just for ourselves, but for all of our center, all of our community, all of the world. We allow that universal voice to speak to us as we move out into our week, to call us to better and better adventures. And we know deep inside that we are those powerful beings who can answer the call, whether it's in a large way or a small way, in any case, in our way. We are so grateful. And so we say, and so it is.
And so it is. Thank you. We can go ahead and stop the recording.
Thank you, Reverend Sally.